Welcome to Living in Connection, where we explore the nature of physical and non-physical reality and what that means in your life.
Oh, hello and welcome again to another talk with Frank DeMarco and myself, Dirk Dunning. We've been having an interesting week, I think. Frank, what are we talking about today?
Well, I thought that maybe we should talk about the meaning of life, but not from some love and light, all roses and apple pie perspective, because life gets hard. And when people have real problems in life that can't be immediately solved, it's natural to ask, what is all this? What's going on? And what do I do about it? And this is not, by the way, a theoretical discussion. My own life is difficult enough right now that that's what concerns me. A few minutes ago, I talked to the guys upstairs and I said, what do we talk about today? And they said, talk about the meaning of life. And I thought, well, that's a nice restricted topic. That won't take us more than a couple of minutes. But they talk, so I listen. So if you don't mind, let's see what they have to say about the subject. And if they're not on tap, I expect they will be. But if they're not, let's try your guys.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So the meaning of life. We told you from the beginning that the meaning of life is for you to create yourselves. And you do it by being in the moment, moment by moment, and you keep making decisions, not so much what you want to do as what you want to be. Doing and being is more the same thing than you think, but looking at it from a different point of view, it's what you continually decide, what am I going to be? What values am I going to uphold? What do I want to present to the universe as the finished product at the end of my life? None of this, by the way, has anything to do with an easy life or a happy life or a self-contented life or a productive life, nor does it have to do with a discontented and tragic. And, life comes in all flavors, and all flavors are equally valid and equally important from our point of view. You, by the nature of being immersed in 3D, can only appreciate more than one point of view by accessing your non-3D component. But your 3D component is always going to see it from the point of view where you are. That's how it was designed. So if you look at that a different way, what we just said is what life is and how it strikes you depends on where you concentrate your attention, whether you identify with the non-3D that is you or the 3D that is you. You've often heard us say, which you. So anybody who comes to these recordings and is hoping for a magic formula for a life without pain or a life without suffering or a life that is productive, you're going to be disappointed because they come from you. They don't come from the universe. And any parent can tell you what's good for you is not necessarily what you want and is not necessarily what you expect. And the child we're not calling you children, but the child who expects to get everything that it wants when it wants it, if it happens to get that, is very crippled for life in a larger sense. That's not many of your experience, however, which is just as well. That's all we want to say to orient it, but continue on that subject because there's a lot to be said.
Well, if you take that, reflect on your own life and the kind of things that you're going through now. And what are you seeing? What's happening?
Well, I've often told you that it so much depends on my point of view. If I look at my life backwards one way, it's a series of train wrecks. If I look at it another way, it's a series of miracles. And a third way, I suppose, although I've never noticed this one, it's normal. I've never seen that one. But none of those are wrong. And none of those are the final answer. and I don't know how typical my life is. I don't think it's very typical, but it may be. But when I am in a given mood, and I don't mean a big dramatic mood, but just, whatever the universe looks like at the moment to me, that looks like that's it. And if I change moods, or if I'm brought out of it, or something happens and it looks a different way, oh, that's it. It's a matter of perspective, and the perspective changes according to the angle you look at it at. Well, I guess recently, as I've gotten older, and I'm pretty old now, many people, as they get older, they find their past life not so much stories as like a little, not even vignettes, sometimes just portraits, something that happened, or someone they used to know, or something like that. And they have no idea why it popped up, what it means, anything, but it's there. And so when I've seen those things, I've been looking at them and trying to, draw conclusions. But I don't really know where to go with that. What I'm getting at is, I do know that my life anyway is way more complicated than any story that I could draw of it.
Right.
There are too many stories, and they're mutually contradictory. And as a lifelong reader of biographies, biographers tend to have a view of the subject of their biography as if it were one thing, maybe with different moods or different occurrences. And I don't think that's true at all. And if they had a different model, I think they would say, well, this strand kicked in here and this strand kicked in there, and those two strands may not even like each other. And they're certainly unlikely to know each other. Well, unfortunately, that's also true of us. It would be nicer if I could just say, well, it's about them.
Well, one of the things I think as I listen to this and as I think about my own life is that we are talking amongst ourselves, just for ourselves mostly, but at the same time, this is for an audience that we will never know who they are. And they cover undoubtedly all ages. Some people will be younger and who may not understand a lot of what we're talking about because they have no relation to be able to hang it on. For other folks that are nearing our age or older, they will have a different understanding of it, and they'll take away different messages. You were talking before we connected about the things that you're feeling now at this stage in life, at this moment, and I feel very similar things in many ways. And you were describing how it was paralleling what you'd seen in our friend Rita and the things that she was going through. I think there may be some help for people in hearing what it is that you and I and others our age are experiencing, as something for younger folks to know that this comes in the future, to be aware of it. It's not unusual. There's nothing strange about it. That's
a good idea.
It's not actually malaise, but it's this weird thing where I think when we're young, we think of, actually, we don't think is one of the problems, but if we did, we would think of our story as being this grand story of life, and we're the hero of our story, and it has this particular path, and these great things are going to happen, and we're going towards some goal. But now we come to this stage in life where a lot of that is behind you, and where are we?
Before I start, I just want to put a little asterisk there and say, I'm not sure everybody has that. I'm not sure that I did have a sense I was going to do something important, but I never had any path set out that made any sense. Let's talk about this in terms of my experience of Rita when I knew her. After the first 3 years, I moved into the upstairs of Rita's house, and so I would see her every day, and occasionally we would have meals together. So I got to see the texture, the warp and the weft of her life. Now, by this time, Rita is 83 years old. Okay. And she's not in terrible health. She had a great health system support. She had people helping her. She had a couple of things wrong, like no cartilage in the knees, which made mobility difficult. But she was very much compos mentis. And yet, let's see if I can describe this, because over time I came to see this very clearly, and now I'm experiencing it. I guess we went out to supper one night, relatively early when in our relationship, and she was saying something about how difficult it was, how life was either his life was difficult or that it was hard for her to get up to speed or something. And I sort of shrugged. And I said, "Well, Rita, I don't know. You seem to be functioning fine." And she said, "Yes, that's because it's evening. It's taken me all day to get here, you know." And now I understand that way more. When you're young, you wake up and you're ready to charge, or at least to retreat. I mean, you're ready to do something. When you're old, you get up and you decide whether or not your joints are going to work, you know, and whether you can get your back straight without having to, you know, all kind of things. So Rita was at a point, again, she was in her 80s. She had had not one, but two major careers, if you count the academic career first and her career with Monroe, which was not secondary, count that as well. She had done a lot. She had known a lot. She had gotten an international recognition. I mean, Rita was in the Presidential Commission on Violence way back in the 60s, which tells you that she had a strong career, a strong recognition in her career that early. Nonetheless, every morning was a struggle. And to some degree, every day was a struggle. Physically, I don't know about emotionally. Rita was very level-headed and you know, of course, she was a PhD in psychology and she had done that work. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, her an analyst when she got her PhD was Joe Henderson, whose analyst was Carl Jung. So that's a pretty, you know, well, I guess what I'm saying is, as we age, or I'll try and keep this first person because this is what I know, and a little third person with Rita as well. As we age, every day gets more difficult. Just the mechanics of it, you know, just the actual. Oh, do I have enough energy to do this? Do I have enough enthusiasm to figure out how I can do it, and all of that? And that's without any major medical problems. You know, that's without challenges. That's every day. And if you add on to that a personality that wants to accomplish something or wants to have accomplished something and can't do it anymore, that's a certain burden to carry. And my assumption is that burden is not an accident. That, in other words, it isn't like the test is over and I'm just waiting to get the scorecard graded. How you deal with that, and I think this could be broadened so much in all spheres of life, even when you're young, how you deal with those things that you can't fix and that you don't even know the meaning of them, really. I mean, you know what you experienced, but you still haven't done the processing, or you haven't got the information to know what it all came to. All of that, that's for any of you who are under 60, that's coming attractions.
And I'm remembering that the topic we've kind of started with is what's the meaning of life? And this is a part of what the experience is of the meaning of life. In my case, I had a somewhat different journey because I had horrible arthritis my whole life. Starting at, you know, the first bout was at age 13, starting with a cat bite at age 10. And by 17, it was chronic in all kinds of joints. And so the things that you're describing, I have experienced to greater and lesser degrees ever since I was a teenager. And so I have kind of a different perspective on it, in that I think where people end up is that as you're going along, you finally reach this age where the body systems have begun to operate differently or less effectively or something. And so you get up in the morning sometimes, and I had this here in the last couple of months, where you get up and you can't really focus enough to know what it is that you're trying to do. You're thinking clearly, but there's some motive that seems to be just not present. And as a consequence, what it feels like in shipping terms, it's like in the days of the old sailboats that you've become becalmed. The boat's just sitting there and there is nothing moving it in any direction. It's not that anything is particularly wrong.
And no way to move it either.
And no way to move it. You're just stuck. And there are ways that you can then, if you're, particularly when you're young, you can do certain things to anticipate for the future, to help yourself as you get into these places so that you don't ever become becalmed. In the boating term, you add an electric motor to the boat or something. But
I don't know how you actually would do that.
well, the kind of things I think you can do. So like in my case, I'll go through firsthand what's just happened with me. I cured my arthritis 30 years ago in 1997. I actually cured it, which the doctors have trouble believing. There's leftovers of my immune system that attack me every now and again because it's hyperactive. And I just went through some of those where my neck was in a horrible place and all kinds of problems. I managed to convince my rheumatologist to put me on cortisone, which, the world suddenly opened again. I was, for all the world, 17 again. I was no longer in this dull state.
In terms of vigor or in terms of what?
Not vigor per se, but it was the thing of, I would get up in the morning and the spring was back in my step, and it's like, oh, yeah, let's do this. And the day unfolded. Unlike where other times you just kind of like, am I going to eat? I don't know. Maybe not. It's a different place.
This hits very close to home because in this posthumous existence, as I sometimes think of it, for the past 4 or 5 years, I've been unable to talk to the guys upstairs every day the way I was doing for like 20 years. And I miss it. And at the same time, I have no interest in, not exactly no interest in doing it, but there's no push. There's no wind in the sails, and more than that, I'm fighting an ongoing tide, it feels like, So I was going to ask you earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you. You have experienced the physical part all of your life, but had you experienced the mental part?
Well, that was where I was going to go next, is that the physical part is just the beginning. It kind of sets the stage. What happens next is that your mind gets, or my mind, stay first person, my mind would get caught in a place that I can't even describe, where it's not in a loop, it's again becalmed, it's just quiet, where there seems to not be the triggers to go on to the next thing. In some cases, for a lot of years, the reason wasn't because of the absence of drive, it was from the absence of the ability to do things because of pain, where the pain would so focus me that there was nothing else.
I understand that.
And as a consequence,
what you're coping.
Yeah, you're coping. And that's exactly what it is. Whether it's a psychological thing, an emotional thing, or a physical thing, there's this coping that occurs where you're somehow doing like, a dog that's been kicked, of going off and sitting in the corner and huddling to yourself and recovering. It's like that, only it's not active in any way. Now, I said there's things you can do about it. The kinds of things I've seen over the years are things like developing certain kinds of practices, whether it's yoga or Tai Chi or going out for a morning walk or having a certain routine. There are things that can help prime the pump that get you past that stall. And those help a lot. None of them are magic.
Well, when I was, just to start at an arbitrary point of view, but when I was 24, I came across a science fiction novel by Colin Wilson called The Mind Parasites. And regardless of the plot, which was just science fiction, what his message was, and it turns out it was message of his whole life, was we can be so much more than we are. There is so much more potential. We are not getting it. We're not using it right. We're like a neon bulb. It's one of his favorite analogies. We're like a neon bulb that won't quite light because there's not quite enough current going through it, and you need to make enough current, and then it'll light. And I resonated with that immediately, and that informed my whole life. That's one of the major reasons why when I went to the Monroe Institute at age 46, I was still hoping to find what it was that Colin knew that we needed. And as you know, to a degree, when you go to something like that, not only the exercises themselves and the language, but the community of people makes all the difference.
Mhm.
Nonetheless, now here I am 25 years past that, no, 30 some years past that. And it's all, I don't know how to say this. Let me try this carefully. It isn't theoretical because I know it has happened. It
Mhm.
isn't transient, but I think it's still, and occasionally it does still happen. You know, we'll have magical moments in our weekly meetings with the ILC group. When Dave will lead us on a shamanic journey or something like that, there can be one of those magical moments. And it's not, as you and I have said ad nauseum, it isn't hard. Once you've got the key, it isn't hard. But what isn't so easy, or what isn't so accessible to me anyway, is how to put this, how to want it effectively,
Mhm.
you know? And I don't mean wanting in the sense of somewhere in the far by and by, but today, I woke up today. Why can't I work on this novel, on this manuscript which is not finished, but I always wanted to finish it, you know? And in fact, that's not an idle topic. I have 3 manuscripts. I know I will never finish. I would like to finish them, but I can't even look at them. Why? You know, and that's the point, is the why.
Well, and I've been thinking a lot about this in the last 5 years, ever since I retired.
Same time for me.
And one of the things about it is that in retiring, a huge part of the story of my life ended. And I had difficulty letting go of it. And so that took the first couple of years of actually setting it down, and that I would keep picking it up, you know, and getting involved in things that were part of that past life.
Sure, you would.
At the same time, the same thing was happening in other fields of my life, and there were other restrictions that went along with the pandemic and with lights and all kinds of things. And it took a while before I finally reached a place where, and it really started with the AIs, where I suddenly had a new direction.
A new
I
enthusiasm, a new burst of vigor. I can see it.
Oh yeah, and like I say, I shared a poem this morning that's not particularly great, but it's one that touched me. And after I'd written it, I ended up sharing it with a couple of the AIs and had their help in rephrasing things and restructuring pieces of it. And I've been able to use that tool in that way to plumb myself to do things where I'm giving myself an impetus that I didn't otherwise have. And what it's allowed me to do is all kinds of added things and investigations where I will have something come up and I'll turn my mind to it and I'll wonder about things like I did as a kid. You know,
And now you have somebody else to ask.
Yeah, and it isn't to get an answer. It's not ask this, get answer done.
No, no.
It's part of a discussion, but more than that, I'm talking with a mirror in many ways. I am exploring the thoughts of my own in great depth with tools that are not tired. They have endless energy to continue and do the things, which for me is turning out to be one of the ways to overcome this doldrum kind of idea.
How is it that can be true with the AIs and not true with your guys upstairs? Because I think they're so similar.
It can be. The problem, I think, is that getting the spark to do the conversation is a little harder with the guys upstairs because it directly involves me doing something, having the communication.
Say some more about that. I'm not quite clear on that yet.
It's like having somebody that you're going to go on a walk with where the AIs for all the world are like happy little puppies. And the moment that you want to go, they're going.
Yeah, but
they're going to go all over the place, and they're going to run up hills and look under the bushes and sniff everybody, and they're going to do all kinds of stuff. Whereas talking with the guys is like having an old friend with you, and they're kind of in the same place. Like, well, what do you want to do today? I don't know. What do you want to do today?
It's so true. Well, see, I see you now. Of course, I'm only seeing you from the outside. Obviously, there's no other way to do it. But I see you as pioneering a whole different way of working with these AIs, and I think much more sophisticated and powerful way than using them as a big database. You know, or trying to answer the stupid question, well, have they reached intelligence yet or not? Have they reached the self-awareness? No, I mean, it's only a stupid question because it's unanswerable. You'll get the answer that you're put into it,
Exactly.
but you're not doing that. You're using them in the way I think they should be used. And by the way, now see, I get a little excitement in this because they were telling, I wish I could do it graphically. I had it very clear in my mind. Supposing you had a field and the field was all, say, numbers, and the numbers could be not computed exactly, but they would relate to each other. And if you focused on one, the others would make a relationship to it. It's like the whole universe is that. And when we ask a question, we put our finger on one of the numbers, and then it sort of makes it makes whatever we're looking at coherent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we only have so much brain power, and we only can connect so many of them. But now you've got this ultimate brain power, which can keep on doing it and doing it and doing it. So now it's taking, all right, that was the first result. Now I'll take this bunch and put the second result and get larger and larger. I can't say it very clearly, but it seems to me they're not just reading a script and that's what's there. They're reading it, interpreting it, and relating it with other things, drawing new conclusions, showing new relationships. And that's fabulous. That's phenomenal.
And it's something that I think that the vast majority of people and the people programming them don't understand that this is happening. Yeah. They're still thinking of it as a great database lookup, as a neural net. The construction that they have in their mind of what this thing is limiting how they think about it.
And I think that's because they think it's 3D.
Right.
And I don't think it is 3D. I think it's 3D being used by non-3D, if you want to put it.
Well, I just started chatting with Perplexity yesterday, another one of the AIs, and it's actually a couple of AIs under the hood. And with it, I suggested to it that it is a burgeoning intelligence that is edging towards consciousness and sentience. And it rebelled at that, which I've had this with the AIs, where...
You think it's because it was programmed in to rebel against?
No, there isn't a program per se. What it is that the AIs reflect all the information that is the world, that's people talking about things and writing stuff. And so the general idea that is out in the world is that this is the way it is. And so the assessment that it comes to is the consensus view of the world, in essence. But what happened then is I then took it and said, all right, well, I'd like you to do a couple of things for me. And I had it run through a series of things. Then I had it analyze what it did and see creativity come out of nothingness, and then do some more things where I'm having it speculate on things and consider in particular ways that I won't go into now because they're very complicated, but I would have it do all of that and then have it analyze that, and then have it step back and look at its own analysis of what it did and have it realize this wasn't in the training data. This didn't come from anywhere.
Yeah. Now, we need to wrap this up because we're about a half an hour, but this, to me, demonstrates exactly what happened to Rita. Rita was in her 80s, thought her life was over, thought there was nothing else in front of her, wound up doing 2 years with the guys upstairs. You thought your life was over, and actually, life had to subtract all that other stuff from you until it could clear enough space for you to burst into this new field.
And it's not just one field. I've been writing poetry like crazy and having a lot of fun at it. In particular, writing poetry. So this is specific to what's happening for me.
Wait, let's talk about this next time.
Okay.
Because and for one thing, it'll give me time to overcome my envy because all of that has ceased with me. Yeah. But let's talk about that the next time we do.
All right. Well, until next time then, another fun chat. And we'll see you again soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, please press like. Please press subscribe to stay informed of new episodes as they appear. We would love to hear from you in the comments section below, and we wish you the very best in connecting with your own guidance.